Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Limited Time Only. I'm your special guest host, Mason, and today I'm joined by a man who's currently looking up his plane ticket so he can team up for GP Indy Unlimited, Danny Cathro. Danny, how you doing?
Doing great. And by currently, you actually meant currently. Like, that's what I'm doing right now.
Yeah, you were looking it
And
up as we went live.
it's true. And then now we're going live. So, it's also something that I love doing.
Yep.
Buying plane tickets and talking about limited magic.
Do you like how normally you're introduced as Silver Pro Danny Cathro? You spend a year grinding, you hit the Silver Pro status, but not with me. Once you team with me
No.
Unlimited, that's now your new thing. It's like, yeah,
I mean,
I'm a
that's
Silver
like
Pro,
that's
but
a new high.
yeah.
Being Mason Clark's team limited GP teammate.
Yeah,
Like,
and then we shot called the top four already too, so it's just so easy.
we pretty much have to do it.
Yeah,
I've never played Team Seal before, but I'm feeling confident. I'm gonna look at some Seal pools.
it's release weekend, right?
I think so. I mean, we're gonna have to. But the nice thing about, I guess, Team Seal weekend, we just need to find other people to
It's
like
so hard because we
care.
live. Yeah,
We need to find people that care, and then we can build sealed pools. Like, I'll sit down for an hour with, like, I'll open. How many packs is it? 12.
12.
Open
Yeah.
12 packs, and then just do it. Like, I'll probably practice that.
Yeah, I mean,
several times.
also we can use and this is a little bit off subject here, but it's something like we can use online resources like those pool generators
Oh, yeah.
and screenshot it, and then have
Oh,
you,
yeah.
me, and Trey all build the decks, and then just see where we
Oh,
end
yeah.
up. So
Should be fun. That'll be a cool experience to talk about.
Yeah, it's definitely gonna be interesting. You can expect to get that on the Patreon only episode of Limited Time Only. We don't actually have those yet. We have Patreon only episodes for CC. But if you want to support the show at the Patreon,
Great.
you can go to patreon.com limited time only. The show will always be free. But if you feel like the show's given enough to you and you want to give back, we very much appreciate it. You know who will always give back to you, Danny?
Oasis games.
Incorrect. Game Grid. Oasis Games is great, but that's the thing.
I actually went to Game Grid, what was it, Tuesday, and they did give back. They run wonderful tournaments that I go to every week.
Word.
Game Grid is my place.
I was going to say congratulations on top 80 the Oasis Games free 1K with Sunmare in your deck. Crusted Sunmare.
So I had to spend $27 on Crested Sunmares, and all of my friends made fun of me because they're like, yeah.
How expensive is Crested Sunmare?
That is a valid question. Surprisingly expensive is the answer to that question. I don't know why, but Crested Sunmares are like $7 each or something. And then I just really, really wanted to play with them. And so I sucked it up and I paid $7 each for 4 Crested Sunmares. And then I lost game 1 in the teamer matchup out of my black-white tokens deck, and then won both sideboarded games because of Crested Sunmare.
So and that was in top 8, right?
No, so we just played to top 8, but
okay.
Just like it was single limb, so it was just like 3 rounds. I think I had to win 3 rounds.
Oh, okay.
I got to do this turn sequence, which was so I also played 2 Crypt of the Eternals in my deck.
That's the Grixis land that gains life, right?
And so post board, I go turn 4 Anointed Procession. Sure. And then next turn, Crypt of the Eternals, gain a life. Cast Crested Sunmare. Incept, get 2 horses. Pass. And then prior in the game, I had played an Authority of the Consoles. And then so my teamer opponent didn't have a removal spell in his hand, and he was like hard locked out of the game. If he plays any creature, it enters tapped, and I get 2 5/5s.
Wow.
And I already have 3. It was beautiful. It was a masterpiece.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was very enjoyable.
A little bit of a pay to win there, but it's whatever.
Yeah, you just gotta get all the good cards, right? All the good cards.
Sometimes you have to force an archetype, like tokens. And that's what today's episode's about. So normally we do Color of the Week, Power Rankings, and stuff like that. But honestly, I haven't played a lot of Limited of this format, so we felt like it would be disingenuous for us to kind of talk about that kind of stuff. And we have a really cool topic, so we're just going to go extra deep on that topic instead and just hop right into it. So, Danny, what is forcing a deck in Limited? Specifically draft is what we're talking about.
Yeah. So in draft, one of the core principles that you learn early on when you're trying to learn how to draft is that you want to stay open and try to read what colors are coming to you so that you can have more options available to you and get a better deck. There are times though that you can be rewarded for like biasing yourself heavily towards certain archetypes or certain colors, or away from certain colors or whatever it may be. And so, like when you're forcing a deck, there's like certain times when you're drafting where it'll actually come up where you will be really, really incentivized to start forcing a deck. And it's not always correct, and you have to like have a really good read on the metagame or like the people that you're drafting with, in order to be able to do it successfully. But if you can, then you'll normally be rewarded by being in a deck that's powerful, that you're comfortable with, and that you can get consistent results with. So
Awesome. So an example of this might be like the Slitherblade deck that Kakano played at PT. Is it Hour?
I
Yeah.
think was it just Amonkhet?
I think it was Hour. I don't think no
Was it
Slitherblade
Hour?
wasn't Amonkhet. You're right.
I
You're
think
right.
it was just
Amonkhet.
Amonkhet because it
Yeah.
was like all the cartouches. It was like Slitherblades, cartouches,
Yeah, it was
like
just
all
Amonkhet.
of them. Yeah, and so like that's a perfect example where their whole team day one, their win percentage in limited was like 80+%. If I remember
I think
correctly, it was
almost
something
all of them
insane.
3-0'd. Yeah, like
Yeah,
one guy
I
two
think
one.
they exactly. I think it was completely broken. And then they did like the little clip of them, and then everyone day two watched that little video and knew that they were all drafting Slitherblades and equipping cartouche of knowledge and solidarity onto them. And then everyone was like,
Zeal.
"Oh well, yeah, zeal, whatever it may be." And they're
Yeah.
like, "Okay, there's 6 picks left. I'll just take the Slitherblade." And then their whole strategy gets completely wrecked because they're like completely relying on wheeling every Slitherblade that's opened. And so they had a perfect read to be able to crush the first one, where they can force this deck. They know it's open because no one else drafts it. They've done enough drafts online. They have never played against it. And but once people know that that's their strategy, it gets pretty hard countered. And so that's why like it definitely is a risky proposition to try to force a deck. But in that example, they had huge success in almost going undefeated in day one, being just forcing the archetype that they wanted to draft.
Yeah, and I think that kind of goes to our next point: is when is forcing bad? Because we're going to talk a lot about how forcing is good, but we do want to touch on when is it bad. And this is a perfect example. Day one, Kakano's team, no one knew about this thing. They all forced Slitherblade. They're talking about some like absurd win percentages. And the next day, everyone knows because it got covered. And everyone's talking on Twitter, blah 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 blah. And then suddenly it becomes bad to force this deck because just like Danny was saying, it's like, well, I can take like this card, I might sideboard, or Kakano's in my pool, and here's a Slitherblade, and he's 2 people down from me. I'm just gonna take the Slitherblade, right? So that's a perfect example. Can you think of other examples of when it might be bad to force archetypes or force a deck, I should say?
So in general, if it's just like a normal run of the mill draft, you don't normally want to force a deck. That's normally going to be a very bad default strategy. Like I feel like it has to be like a unique situation that comes up for forcing a deck to be good. So like in that situation, it was a pro tour. The format was fresh and new, and they had discovered an effective strategy that other people had not. Mm-hmm. And if you like look back, Amonkhet was one of the most aggressive, fast formats, and they figured that out before everyone else and went all in on it. And they were able to do it successfully by using like different aggressive cards that other people weren't. And so they understood how the format worked better than other people, and that allowed them to force that deck successfully. And so unless you have some kind of information asymmetry, you're normally not going to want to be forcing a deck.
Yeah, it's funny how perfect the Slitherblade is because it goes next in right into our next point in when it's the difference in information, right? Like the time to think about forcing it. Like day one, like I mean, I wonder if they thought like have other teams broke it. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
Like it's so weird. Like you like find the Slitherblade thing and it's like I'm just gonna say it's like so bad, right? Like if anyone else knows, it's literally it's only good if you're the only person in the room who knows to play Slitherblade.
Uh-huh.
So it's like, I mean, like it's really bad. So that difference in information is huge there, and that's the other thing too about forcing these archetypes. Like another example I can think of is Cube, right? So like
Cube, I was thinking the exact same thing. Cube is perfect.
Yes. So in Cube, I will, and if you ever draft me, I'm gonna draft green-white fair cards every single time, unless I just get enough green cards I can play mono green fair cards, and that's all I'm gonna do. So it's like there's a difference in information where it's like people know that I'm going to do this, so they might take cards, right? Like if I'm drafting with friends at like, someone's house or a cookout, and then compared to Magic Online. So the difference in information there is pretty huge. And also, do people know if the strategy is good or not? That's a huge moment. What do you like normally force an archetype in cube, Danny, regardless, or because we've cube
Yeah,
drafted a little bit together.
yeah, cube I generally go in spurts. So there'll be like a few archetypes that I enjoy, and then some of them are normally just open at most tables. So I know in the vintage cube I would draft like Esper Opposition. Like that's the one that you tap a creature. I just like all the token makers and then just pretty much splashing opposition.
Word.
And it was great. Or mono black is actually really good in a lot of cubes. For some reason, black. There's like they put in like Phyrexian Obliterator, and you're the only
I
one.
wouldn't know. I only force green and white cards, so I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know these cards you're talking about. Continue.
Yeah. And so cube is like a great example where if you feel like you know a deck that's often not drafted. So mono black's a great example. Almost no one ever drafts mono black, and I'll force that deck if I'm just kind of in that type of mood, and it almost always works out because you just start cutting all the black cards, and the person on your left, there's no way they're going to be in black, and even the person on your right isn't going to be in mono black. That doesn't happen. So you'll be able to get a lot of late, really powerful cards just because you know what people around you aren't going to be drafting.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And then this kind of goes into the point two of this, which is like, did you break it, right? And being like
Yes.
realistic with yourself. So like, mono black is an archetype, but Danny doesn't think I did it. Cube solved,
exactly.
Reddit front page, mono black. He's
90%
realistic.
win percentage with mono black. Yeah, like I don't. Yeah, in cube, I don't think that I'm breaking the format by drafting mono black. It's just that's a deck that's often open, but it's not necessarily that much more powerful or even as powerful as other archetypes. So by me forcing it, it's probably not even good for my win percentage. It's probably bad because on average, it's probably going to lead to a worse deck than if I were to just stay open and draft whatever colors came to me.
Exactly, and that's a perfect example too. Now, part of that is your motivation, right? Like when you're playing cube, you're playing for fun. It's not like when you're playing at the Pro Tour or a GP or something, and that's acknowledged by you. But that's perfect because that could happen in a limited format, right? So like, let's take this format for example, Ixalan. Someone might think they have the format broken with their big dinosaur deck, right? Like the first couple weeks, they draft green white dinos. They like do pretty well with it on Motor, and they're like they've broke it, and they feel like they have it, and they never check back base and like wait. Did I actually break it? And they never, you know what I mean? And that's a huge thing when you're trying to force a deck. So you have to be aware of that.
Yeah. If you misread the format and you're forcing a deck that's bad, it's like that's a really dangerous proposition. Because what if like the person on your right is just happens to be in some of those colors and you're trying to force it and it's bad? Whereas, like, if you're trying to force a deck that's good, then sometimes you can make it work even if you're being cut a little bit, just because you know it's the best strategy. But yeah, you definitely need to be pretty confident that you have a good read on how the metagame's going to play out.
Yeah, and you have to also be aware of, like, the caliber and the people at which you're drafting with, right? Like, if you're drafting, like, a local PPTQ on the release weekend, a lot of people might not even know all the cards in the set. Right?
Exactly.
Where if you're playing a team limited GP on the release weekend, you can assume, especially if you're like, like let's say you're X and 1, right? You could assume your opponents like have a good idea. And so that kind of stuff matters a lot, especially like when you get to the drafting portion like we're talking about here. But let's talk about some times when it's good to be forcing a deck archetype, specifically like Slitherblade. Do you normally force these things like if you're on the higher seed in a top 8 or if you know you're going to have to play, for example?
Yeah,
like,
so this is a great example of where you have like some extenuating circumstances, right? So let's say that you make the top 8 of a PPTQ and you are the number 1 seed. So you're always going to be on the play. And so when you're going into that draft, you have the knowledge that if you draft a deck that really like has a big advantage from being on the play, then you're going to be even more advantaged. So if you like, you can slant your decisions towards drafting an aggressive deck because you know that you can capitalize on your aggression way more often by being the number 1 seed.
Same for being 8th seed too, but the inverse of it too, right?
Exactly.
If like I'm gonna be on the draw every game, I'm gonna draft maybe a slightly slower, more reactive deck.
What format? I think I was the 8th seed in a PPTQ that I won, and I main deck 2 1-mana 0/4s. I had a pretty slow deck. and I would normally never main deck them, but I knew I was just going to be on the draw in game one, so I just like pre-sideboarded as if I was on the draw against aggressive decks, and it was super effective. Like my O4s were awesome and blocked a ton of things, and they were able to like catch me up and like pretty much trade one for one, which is what you need when you're on the draw. So
Yeah, especially like because if the number one guy's like, I'm gonna draft a fast deck, you just like,
uh-huh.
0-4, go.
Yep.
Wall of mulch. Pass the
Yes.
turn.
Yeah, it was like some kind of crab. There's some crab. I forget what format. I think it was Eternal Masters. Was
Oh,
that
okay. That might have been
there's
I don't know if you can
there's
have
crab in
PBDQ for Eternal Masters. I don't know. I'm thinking Theros block, but that's probably wrong.
there? No, not quite. But yeah, I think using that type of information to influence your draft is just good. Like there's so many little edges that you can get while you're approaching different drafts, and knowing that you're on the play is definitely a huge edge that you can try to take advantage of.
What about when it comes to bomb rares? So like opening
Uh-huh.
like a Scarab God. Like how much does that affect your drafting?
So it depends. It also depends on the format. So like certain formats, it's a lot easier to splash, and so you can open a Scarab God, for example, an Hour of Devastation, and then you don't even have to be close to blue and black. You can just be a green deck, and you know that you're going to be able to play Scarab God. And but in other formats, maybe if it was just Amonkhet, you know, it's a pretty aggressive format, and you're not going to be able to splash as easily. And if you open Hazoret or something, you're going to have to be base red or have a lot of red in your deck. And so, depending on what the format looks like, you're going to have to kind of determine how much you're going to be able uh, to influence your drafting decisions, depending on your rares. I'm a big fan of drafting around rares. I do it a lot, and I think it is a little bit higher variance way to draft, but
Do you want to expand on that a little bit?
yeah, so if I open a strange rare that's powerful but needs to be in a certain archetype, I normally take it, and then I'll see if that archetype is at all open, and I'll try to like make the most use out of my rares. Like I really enjoy drafting decks that when I draw my best card, I'm really likely to win because my deck is kind of built in a way so that when I draw it, I win. Um, would be a good example? So I opened a at my first pro tour. I opened like a Newscraft mob,
What's a
which is the
newscraft mob?
so it was like the 6 mana when it enters with 5 counters whenever a player, maybe it's just an opponent, casts a spell, you remove a counter and get a 2/2. So I opened that, and so I took it, and it was like fine in that format, but it wasn't insane. But then there was also this common that returned a zombie to your hand, and you drew a card, and it was a zombie. And then I also had like there's like the uncommon that gives your zombies menace, and it was fine. You could like remove a card from your graveyard to make a zombie. So I played all of them, and I drew Newscraft Mob a lot, and every time I did, it was like not remotely close. It would be, like I would make 5/2/2s, and then I would get it back and play it again, and the game was like completely over because it was just so much, like so many bodies. And that's an example of where if you open a card, you can kind of twist your deck to be good at capitalizing on what that card does. Um, it it's definitely it takes a lot of practice though. You need to because you have to be very good at kind of thinking on your feet and drafting unique decks that you haven't drafted before, and so it makes a lot of the random picks that normally are pretty straightforward into a lot more difficult decisions. So like let's say that you first pick like if you open a Panharmonicon and you've never opened a Panharmonicon before and you've never drafted a Panharmonicon deck, that would be a very difficult deck to draft in the moment. And so I think it's a type of drafting that requires a lot of practice.
Okay, that makes a lot of
So
sense. Do,
yeah.
do you think it's pretty easy to trick yourself and like kind of stumble on these things? Yeah,
Yeah,
I see you
it's
shaking your
like
head. Yeah.
like I think if I was drafting a very important draft, like top 8 of a PPTQ or at a Pro Tour or a GP, it's not like the time to first pick a Panharmonicon. Like that's not like that is like you need to acquire those skills. But I think that you can be super rewarded for having those skills tuned. I think was it the last GP? I think it was Sam Black. He opened a Wrath of God, and then or was it a Damnation? He opened some.
The
Yeah,
invocation.
yeah.
Yeah,
He got an
damnation.
invocation. It was a Damnation, and then like he drafted a Damnation deck, and he went 3-0, and his deck looked completely insane and super weird, but he had practiced enough drafting around strange cards that you open that when he opens Damnation as an invocation, he's like, oh wow, this card's super powerful. I'm going to take it, and then I'm going to draft this strange deck to make sure I capitalize on it.
Are you saying Sam Black plays with weird cards a lot?
Yeah, no, like yeah, I mean, it spills over into
It-
constructed, right? He
yeah.
always plays weird cards,
I would
and
say it's spilt over to limited that time, but yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And not every player would have done that. Not every player would have just snapped that off and played it. And I think it's a skill that you can definitely capitalize on and use to your own benefit. But.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely the times when you force specifically weird archetypes, the ones we're kind of talking about right now, the times when they work and it also catches your opponent off guard, they are like nigh unbeatable. And you just have to be aware that when you're doing that, you are accepting a little bit of risk. But like when you pack one, pick one, Graph Mob, was that the name of the card?
Newscraft Mob, I think?
Noose Graph? I don't know. I don't even know the set you're talking about. So
Eldritch Moon.
Eldritch Moon? Okay, sure. Wait, did you draft zombies and then play zombies in the main event? You're just like mono zombies?
Yeah, my limited strategy spilled over into my constructed strategies.
Powerful. But regardless, you're, when you're doing these things, you're accepting a little bit of variance, and you have to be able to live your life with that. Be like, well, I'm gonna take this Newscraft mob, and maybe it's gonna be insane, maybe it's not, but I'm willing to take that higher pick over, let's just say a lightning strike, for example, right? Like just a solid card. So I think it's important to be aware of those kind of things when you're doing them.
Yeah, so for me, most professional drafts reward finishing 3-0 really highly. It's a little different at a pro tour. You're like very incentivized to just try to go 2-1, just like have a good deck, like above average deck. But at a GP, you really want to go 3-0. Like you have to do 2 drafts on the second day, and you want to normally go 4-2 or 5-1, take it a really good finish. If you just go, and so kind of taking a higher variance deck, that like a deck that has a higher upside because you're starting with such a powerful card, is definitely a good skill to acquire.
Yeah,
and learning to draft like that.
Well, it's more like just a tool in your arsenal too. Like
Exactly.
practicing that kind of stuff. So it's like you have that, but you also just know how to draft the basic stuff. So you can 2-1, right? Maybe the first pod, and then the next pod you're like, I really need 3-0, and you have the Newsgrass mob, and you're like, all right, we're going in, So,
and that's the trick. Is like every draft is different. Like sometimes you'll just open an unplayable rare, and you'll just like first pick a random common, and then you're just kind of trying to read the table and see what's open. You'll have a very normal draft, but occasionally you'll open a strange rare that is situational, but that you can take advantage of and really use to try to win more matches than you would otherwise.
Yeah, like Inferno Titan. Really hard to play with that one.
Yeah, some rares are easy for sure. There's definitely some straightforward ones, but.
Yeah. Also, I think one last thing I want to touch on before we wrap this up here is forcing just average decks too, because it can also just be very tempting to be like, oh, I can go really in on this, but it's like, no, like sticking to your principles too. I think that is kind of part of this. So I just wanted to mention on that. It's very basic, but it's still part of it.
Definitely. Definitely is part of it.
Well, I thought this was a really interesting conversation, Danny. I had a lot of fun. Did you enjoy forcing this topic today?
I enjoyed forcing the topic. I think it's so I probably take this a little too far, but I have definitely enjoyed drafting like this. Like this is possibly the most fun way to draft for me. And it often spills over to when I'm trying to draft at like a competitive event. I will lean back on the strategy a lot. And I think it's really interesting, and what makes it so difficult to practice is just like it's different every time. Like we're trying to talk about these scenarios where you open some weird card and you're so unlikely to open that specific card, but there's so many. Exactly, you have to kind of develop an intuition, and hopefully I think the best way to learn how to do it is just by being willing to draft strange decks when you're at a casual event.
Yeah, and just being like, well, I know Lightning Strike is good, but I don't know how good this. What's it, Legion Battalion, the ship that flips over to like 5 different things
Sure.
in Ixalan?
Yeah.
Like that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How good? Yeah.
Who knows?
You got like, and what if you can draft it and then kind of draft a deck that works better with it, so that you can make sure you win.
What if we open the Immortal Sun at the GP? It's like, do we put this thing in our deck? I don't know. Probably.
This is true. We're gonna have to look it up.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Well, I thought this was awesome. I don't want to force you to off there, but man, that was the worst force joke. I'm sorry. You know who would never force you to buy cards from them though, but you probably should? It's Game Grid. Game Grid is the sponsor of this, along with the Mana Base. They have, as Spencer put in the notes here, the Mason Clark Slayer. I don't know who this Mason Clark guy is, but whatever.
They've really like hammered that one home. Like you need to. Is there a grudge match incoming?
Well, first off, Nikachu has to know who I am to have a grudge match.
This is true.
So first, I need to start some beef. Maybe I'll get some of my own Twitter drama going on this week.
just call him out on Twitter.
Yes.
Hey, I bet I can beat you in a best of 5. Merfolk versus whichever deck you choose. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. No, I'll play. Oh, first, I guess I gotta get my own shtick first. So I gotta get my shtick.
Yes. That makes sense.
Yeah. Hey, I'll be the Green White Company guy. I'll just take Todd Stevens' thing, and then I'll appropriate it. It's the best way to do it. America did it for years, and so then I'll challenge Nikachu to a grudge match. Then I'll beat Nikachu, because if I don't, I'm dead. DOB. So
this is it's a thorough plan, but it's a good plan.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a lot about playing Magic is having a game plan. I'm going to force this game plan. I'm all in on this plan. So probably after this, you're going to see me tweeting angry things at Nikachu. I'll probably get some like dead Merfolk fan art made and just like PM it to him on Twitter and just go deep on it till I get a grudge going. But no, it's awesome. The Mana Base, they support people. They specifically try to support up and coming content creators. They don't go after the professors of the world. They go after the Danny Cathers of the world.
The up and coming.
The up and coming. The
mere silver pros.
Exactly.
Trying to get silver again.
They're trying to get their hooks into you, and then see, that's a fish joke. And then when you go gold, they're like, "We got you."
You're relentless, Mason. Relentless.
Yeah. I like to force a good joke when I can. But normally this is what we do. What's the pick? If you tweet it, we will pick it. I don't think we have one. Danny is looking it up right now. I can see.
I am looking at it.
But you send us a picture of the most recent format or the most recent cube on Magic Online. We look at it. We take a card. If you want to do, I like pack 1 pick 2s a lot. I know that's something Spencer likes as well. So if you want to screenshot hey, I took this primetime pack 1 pick 1 because you're smart, and then you're like, what do I take here? We can help you out. Danny, did you find it?
Yeah, there's no new ones.
No new ones. That's fine.
Yeah.
Do you know why? This format, pretty meh.
It's old. It's been on for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what the holidays do. Holidays make the format go on for a very long time.
And we have another 30 plus days of the format.
Mm-hmm. And then we only still have half of it. It's still with another set.
Yeah, exactly. We'll get Skullduggery and Vampire Zealed in the new set.
Forever. And always.
I love it. Hopefully the next set is as fun and interactive as this one. That's the bar, which I hope every set, really.
This is true. It's a high bar.
Yep. I don't want to force this show to go on any longer. Danny, thanks for joining me, and we'll see y'all next week.
Have a good night.